Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining for our digital Q&A session with our guest, Kavindi. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you here from the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and I recognise their connection to this land, waters and skies, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I also extend those respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today, and also the lands that you might be visiting us from, joining this meeting on today as well. My name is Akshay, and I'm a space communicator at the Australian Space Discovery Centre. And I'm currently here in Adelaide. Today I'm assisted by Bella and Catherine behind the scenes. So if you have any questions during our chat today, please submit them through the Q&A. We'll ask your teacher if you're joining from a school to submit them, and I can pass them along to our guest. One last piece of housekeeping. So our session will be wrapping up at about 2:45 Australian Central Standard Time today, but we invite you to stop into our Discovery Centre or drop us a line via the contact details on our website if you wanted to get in touch to find out more or just have any more questions. So today our space guest Kavindi is also joining us from, actually, do you want to introduce yourself, Kavindi, and just kind of go through everything?
Yes, thank you, Akshay. Thank you everyone for having me. As Akshay started, I am Kavindi De Silva, and I am joining here from Adelaide as well, from Inovor Technologies. My role at Inovor is the Public Relations Officer, taking care of anything public facing. From external relations communications to any type of business development activities that we are doing, and the outreach that we're doing towards students in universities and anybody and everybody who wants to be engaged with the company and know more about what we do here at Inovor. So I am originally from Sri Lanka, and that's where my space journey started, with being in the astronomy club of my school, trying to find opportunities for not just me, but also my friends to pursue educational prospects and maybe career opportunities in space, and how to kind of get into the space industry from this little island. From there, I have also visited the US, Germany, France, Spain, and many other European countries, working there and studying there. And eventually, with my space journey, it also led me to Australia. In 2018, I was part of the Space Studies program organized by the International Space University and the University of South Australia, and that was kind of my door opening towards the space industry. From there onwards, I was very much involved with the International Space University, both from a professional point of view, but also from an academic point of view. I completed their master's a few years ago in France, and that gave me a head start to the space industry. And from all the people I've met, all the events I've attended, and all the industry professionals I've collaborated with, all of that, again, led me back to Australia, here to Inovor Technologies and to Adelaide, to reconnect with the space industry here and to be part of it and to see what more Australia can bring to the world, bring to the international or the global space industry. During my time, I think these are some of the highlights with the International Space University. It gave me the opportunity to work and to learn from astronauts, such as the first Korean astronaut, Soyun, the one all we know, Dr. Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon, and a few others from the European Space Agency. But also one of the other highlights was the below right corner picture is with Dr. Jeff Hoffman, NASA astronaut, who is also the astronaut that helped repair the Hubble telescope, that we now know what it is, and we have all these amazing pictures of the universe and how it looks like. So it was such a great experience and moment to work and learn from these heroes of the space industry, and learn really what are the challenges we are facing to send something or someone to space, the harsh conditions that we have to go through to train and to prepare things to be launched into space. So so with all of these, I've also come to know that there are many departments in space that you can be part of, and that will help you make your path towards the space industry. And from my childhood, I had one goal, that is to become an astronaut. And I thought maybe doing physics or astrophysics, or maybe just doing sciences will actually get me there. But knowing more about the industry and how business works, and how the industry is now more commercializing towards the aspect of making space accessible in terms of sending people, sending spacecraft, research into space, it's becoming more and more accessible to people that necessarily do not need to have a space or science background. And it shows you how diverse and multidisciplinary this industry is, and that whatever you study and whatever your interests lie, later on in the pathway you can combine it towards the space industry. And probably you will have a job already there in the space industry. And sometimes countries have resources enough for people to be part of, but some countries do collaborate with other countries and then provide opportunities. But more and more as we go, the space industry is becoming very globally accessible throughout other countries and continents, so that you don't have to necessarily rely on your continent or your region. And the more you learn about the space industry and take part in it, maybe it may be in terms of like conferences or events, or even just networking with people online and on site, you get to see the amount of projects that are ongoing, the amount of businesses, startups that are right now rising, that address many problems and provide solutions, not just in space, but also how we can mitigate some of the problems here on Earth. And with all of these experiences, I've come here to Adelaide now, be part of Inovor Technologies, and I'm very excited because I'm part of this community that is working very hard towards getting the community engaged here in South Australia, but also Australia in general, to get more children, more students, more university students engaged in space and the space industry, and showcase that we have the talent and the capacity to build our own sovereign capabilities. And with Inovor Technologies, one of our milestone events are coming up, which is going to be our first satellite launch. And this satellite, Spirit, is funded by and supported by the Australian Space Agency, in collaboration with the University of Melbourne and many other industry partners like Newman Space, Nova Systems, and also, of course, Inovor, which we helped build the bus and was fully integrated, assembled, and made right here in Adelaide in Inovor. So very exciting times coming ahead. And with this, I hope that a lot of people in Adelaide, in South Australia, in Australia in general, will know that we have a very exciting industry, and the growth of it is way ahead of us, and that there's so many opportunities that we can take part in.
Thank you, Kavindi. While we wait for some questions for the audience, I have a few of my own. So I was just kind of wondering, what was the differences? Well, I guess I'm sure there are a lot of differences, but I guess the biggest differences between the work you did in the US and Europe. Obviously, they have I guess much more established space programs. The Australian Space Agency is only 5 years old. How do you feel maybe those kind of changes had affected the industry, or I guess the education? Yeah, if you want to speak to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, a lot of the work that I've done in the US were more research-based, and with my more foundational knowledge of astrophysics. I was not very much part of the industry per se, but in Europe, I was fortunate enough to work with a lot of the companies, a lot of the agencies across the region. And when I compare the experience in working, I think the industry or the startup culture the new space economy is quite similar to what is going on currently in Australia. But of course, in terms of like the government, the agency side of things, a lot of the space agencies in Europe are very old in terms of the finding, what they do, the types of projects, the budgeting, the amount of funding they get from public and private sectors, which I don't think we are there yet from Australia. But I think a good part is that we also have agencies like the Portuguese Space Agency and the Luxembourg Space Agency, who are also comparatively very, very new, but have adopted their own styles and methods of governing. And I think what we can learn from the Australian side is that we don't necessarily need a history of decades to do big things and to do bigger projects. But I think what it needs is proper governance, proper like capability and capacity, which we Australians have. And there's a lot of talent in universities that can be collaborated into the industry side, which is something similar that Europe also does. A lot of the university students and universities are very keen in collaborating with industry and share opportunities amongst so that the industry grows well and sustains. And I see that here in Australia as well. And what we also want to do from a company perspective is like increase the opportunities and the chances and the type of projects that we can do across universities with the talent that's coming from universities.
Yeah, amazing. And just a reminder to our audience, if you do have any questions, just post them in the chat and we can ask our guest, Kavindi. A few more questions. So you mentioned that you had, I guess, like your education background in science and astro, but now you work as a public relations officer. Do you want to maybe discuss how you kind of made that shift? What I guess made you want to make that switch?
Yeah, I don't think my space journey is very straightforward compared to a lot of the other professionals that are out there. But the reason why I started with a physics or let's say astronomy background is that was my connection towards space. Stargazing, knowing a lot about the planets, the stars, and wanting to know more about the theories, about the unanswered mysteries of the universe was always one of the key reasons why I loved space and I always wanted to be connected to it. And I just felt the need to really wanted to study that side and think that would create a pathway towards the industry. But something I've seen is that the academic side of things, the industry, is not that connected as much as I thought it would be, at least not a few years ago when I started trying to make my path towards becoming a space professional. And when I traveled to different countries and when I met different people who have gone to space or who have been in the industry, they have done so many things. Their portfolios were very diverse. And even though I was studying more sciencey stuff, I was very good with like event management or like doing outreach events. And as I said, when I was in Sri Lanka, when the country doesn't really offer anything much in terms of space or like what you can study in universities or even like at least a space company that you can work in, like none of that. So you had to actually create opportunities for you, make small organizations within your communities that, this is for people that like space or, one day want to go to space, and you have to be creative with it and get everybody involved. And that was kind of like my way of doing outreach and being part of the space education side of things without even me knowing that I'm part of it. And I think my skills kind of developed from there onwards. And when I came back from the US to Sri Lanka, I also started working in the private education sector and started learning more on like how tertiary education works and how important it is, like even from an early childhood age to kind of be part and be able to understand space and science and how much of an impact that makes. So having my kind of second passion in like education and getting people engaged in outreach to my interest in space, I kind of combined all of that together. And fortunately, I was also able enough to do a second degree in business, in international business management, which then gave me a whole perspective on like, oh, what would it be like to get, you know, space and business and comms and everything together. So even though I was doing a lot of the space stuff and a lot of the scientific stuff, like in parallel, I was more engaged and doing in business related stuff. And a lot of the work that I've done, a lot of the companies that I've worked with, I've worked in similar roles as the public relations stuff, external comms, media relations, investor relations, business dev. So yes, I used my space background and a lot of the technical skills, but also on the side of people management, interacting with people, the comm side of things, selling space, also educating about space, also bridging those two groups, maybe getting people to get more engaged in pursuing space as a career, an educational pathway, but also making people understand that space is not just for the rich or for the highly educated or for the privileged, but also it's for everybody, and that knowingly or unknowingly, we are always connected to space. We all use a mobile phone, we all use technology every day of our lives, and that's literally space applications. So if people were able to make that connection like every day of their life, or at least knew that we have that connection, I think people would be more aligned to pursue space as a career or as a hobby. And that was kind of my way of interacting with the industry and then finding my way through it. So that's how I, you know, came into the public relations side of things in space, and is part of the industry now.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really interesting. I guess it goes to show that, you know, you don't need to have a traditional career pathway to really succeed in this industry. And it's really cool to know that, you know, you also don't have to do what you studied, right? You can do, you know, if you decide that something else is you're passionate about, but you can still do something you love, then that's really cool. That's really awesome to hear.
Indeed, yeah. And I think what you learn doesn't go to waste. And I think a lot of people probably think that, okay, maybe I studied this, but I want to study something else. You'll never know how those two can, you know, can be combined later in your life, and like how the technical, but also the soft skills that we learn by studying a subject, by going to like university or being engaged in a program, helps us a lot more than what we actually, you know, sit down and study. So I think that's a great thing that you mentioned, that, you know, people don't need to now think that there's only one way and one way only, and then there are many ways that you can go. And even if, let's say, one will fail, because we like to think that if something doesn't work for us, it's kind of like a failure. It's actually not. I think it's more of an experience, and like it's more of another way of how else can we do things, rather.
Yeah, that's a really great outlook. I guess, you know, no learning goes to waste. Learn every day. I guess that's the way, you know, we should all be looking at our education, because quite often, you know, we go to school and it's like, hey, you know, how is this applicable? But it's not necessarily about, you know, exactly what you're learning in school or at uni. It's about, you know, learning to learn, and I guess like the skills behind that, which can be really, really useful in the most, I guess, random ways. You might not even think about how it can be applied, but it just is, which is really cool. So it would be really interesting if you could maybe just walk us through a day in your life at Inovor. Just, you know, wake up, get to work. What does a day in the life of Kavindi look like?
I think it tends to be that every day is like a different day for me, which I really like, which means like it could be a different challenge every day. And the cool thing for me is that every day I get to work with all of the engineers and the management and everybody else, like maybe our partners or our supporters and our collaborators. And this is so when I get to work, I of course, as we all do, we check our emails, we check our days, we plan our week ahead, and we see what's going on. And one of the interesting things that I like to see on my calendar is like a career night or a space industry night, or a university has sent Inovor an invite, like wanting to come and do a program with them. Or like a press interview or something that we get the chance to kind of tell our story to the public and get everybody engaged. On the other hand, just to progress on some of the missions that we're working on, how we can better tell the story of all these missions, how we can kind of relate it to our community to explain the benefits of space technology and space applications. And to see how more we can interact with our industry or with our supporters online, or what other events that is happening in Australia or internationally, and how we can promote the services and the products that Inovor has and the world-class technology that all the engineers here are producing every day. So that's the exciting part of like my day, of finding ways and finding opportunities to interact more with each of these groups, maybe it be industry, customers, student groups, or anything in between. Oh, and sometimes it can be parents and kids too that want to learn more about, what a satellite is, or like, do we even, can they build one at home, and things like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I guess it's kind of similar to, I guess in some ways, the work that we do here. You know, it's really cool to guys talk to people and pick their interest in the space industry. So you've been in Inovor for 6 months, is that correct? Yeah. So I guess pardon?
Coming close to 6 months, yeah.
Yeah. So that's not, I guess, too long in the scheme of things, but you know, you've, I guess, been following Spirit. How have, I guess, everyone, you've seen like the excitement go up? How's that kind of experience been? Because I guess it's really cool to work in a space company, especially when, you know, you're gearing up to actually see the hard work that you've put in to, I guess, go into fruition. Yeah, that'd be really cool to, I guess, discuss that.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an exciting time. It's, our first satellite from Inovor, and the teams have been working very hard. And this is, our time to shine, really, and to showcase, what Adelaide, South Australia, Australia in general, can bring to the world. And there are so many things in Spirit and with Spirit. That can be showcased, that are very much on the world-class technology side of things, and how well the satellite has been built and assembled, and the type of payloads that the satellite carries, because of course every satellite slash spacecraft has a purpose, and that purpose is derived by the payloads that are on it. And Spirit has such a great story on like what the payloads do, and it's an astrophysics payload from the Italian Space Agency, but also from the Melbourne Space Program. It's really an exciting time, because I mean, this is like our pride and joy, and you can kind of imagine that almost it's like this is like the biggest thing of the company, because it's, as I said, like our very first satellite, and we can't wait for it to be launched, and then we establish the comms and so on and so forth. And again, this is a big moment to kind of showcase and celebrate, because it's not just for Inovor, but I guess South Australia in general, and also just Australia, to see that one of our first agency supported satellite is going to get launched. So we are just counting the days down, preparing for the launch excitement, and trying to keep the public as informed as possible, and trying to get everybody engaged, especially the universities and the schools as well, because space excitement kind of starts from there, and they can see then that one day, if they want to be part of the space industry, that exciting things are happening in Australia too, and there are jobs, there are career opportunities, and there are great projects to be part of.
Yeah, I'm sure most of us, space fans, space people in the space industry have been following it and are really, really excited for the launch to happen. Now we've got a few questions from our audience. So we've got one from Sophia. She asks, or they ask, out of all the amazing countries you've visited, what has been your favorite?
A hard question. If I had to pick one, I would pick Spain. And I think it's also because mainly because of the culture, because of the people, and because of how like friendly the society in Spain was. I think the more of the welcome, how the collaboration part works, and it's so culture rich and culture heavy. And when you get to learn a little bit of Spanish, you get to explore the dance, the music. I think it's just all adds up to be a very nice place to visit and live. And if you get the chance, you should definitely, especially south of Spain, highly recommend. And personally, I'm a dancer, so I love learning other dances and other cultures, how their dances influence their cultures, and how the history is being kind of wrapped around in all of that. So it was just a great learning experience for me, and one of the best. So definitely would pick Spain on the top.
Perfect. So we've got another question similar to, I guess, what we were discussing before. We know that, I guess we've already spoken about the fact that, any education is really, really useful, no matter what it is, even though it might not be directly related to what you end up doing in your career. But we have a question, I guess, asking, if you, knowing what you know now, would you have taken a different track to get there, or you still would have done the same things, like still done your, science and astrophysics courses, or, just gone straight to the public relations?
That's an interesting question. I think there are two sides to this question. I think one is that I didn't have the information that I have now to have made better decisions to, let's say, maybe speed up my personal goal of becoming an astronaut. I'm now seeing that, of course, if you pursue something in engineering, or if you, in some countries, you're part of the defense side of things, the military, your chances of becoming a traditionally trained astronaut is much higher, which was not the case, when it came to like Sri Lanka. We don't have those pathways defined. So I always looked up to NASA astronauts, or like ESA astronauts, and it's always like people that are like engineers, or people that have like 2 masters, 2 PhDs, and all of that. And I think when I did my undergrad, I did not have that information at all. So maybe I would have changed what I learned in terms of, maybe I would have become an engineer, and maybe I would have, increased my chances. But at the same time, I probably wouldn't have come so far with meeting all of the astronauts that I've met, or doing all the cool projects that I've done, or visiting all the countries that I've visited. And I wouldn't have even maybe come to Australia. So I don't want to change all of that and say, yes, I would have done something else. So I think I'm very happy with how far I've come. I think I would have maybe tried to do some of the things better, plan a little bit ahead, maybe know how to search information, or just execute certain things, or maybe learn a little bit more like what other countries are doing in terms of space, maybe like our neighboring countries, or like specifically South Asia or Southeast Asia, because a lot of things are happening in those regions. It's just that the news doesn't travel as far as how, if something happens in the US or something happens in Europe, the news is much more flashier, much more bigger, and people want to be part of those industries. But we should not forget that the other regions, even including like Africa and South America, are doing tremendous things in space, and doing really groundbreaking projects that some countries and some citizens that are not in those countries can take part, and they're very willing to cross collaborate and bring in students, do exchange programs, and give some sort of a cultural but also professional learning experience. So I wish I'd have done that more, so that I knew what other countries were doing and probably like place myself in those situations. But from that learning, I kind of like encourage everyone who is either, let's say, like right out of university, or maybe in like their final years of university, maybe in first 2 years, because because these days, even though you go to university, a lot of people like to learn outside of university as well and do a lot of extracurricular activities. Do go to space conferences, do go to the events around you, around your country, around your region, and see what the other countries and what other people in your maybe age bracket, or maybe your uni range, like what they're doing and what they're up to. And that gives you kind of like a perspective on like, wow, like this is what's happening, I had no idea. And you never know, you might meet your next employee there, you might meet your next best friend there, and the chances are just endless. So put yourself out there and be engaged in a lot of other events that are happening outside of your vicinity.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really interesting. And it's great that you pointed out, it's not just America and Europe doing really cool space things. There are a lot of countries around the world that we might not immediately think of that are doing, really, really groundbreaking stuff. And yeah, it's cool to check up on those, because there can be some really, really amazing opportunities. We have a question from Annabelle, who is only 8 years old. They really want to be an astronaut, and they were wondering what they need to do to be one in Australia. And you also mentioned at the start that it's been your dream since childhood to be a future astronaut. Is that still an aspiration for you? What are you doing? If it is, what are you doing to, I guess, work towards that?
So I'll start with Annabelle's question. And, Annabelle, you're 8 years old. It's a perfect age to start, preparing to becoming an astronaut. And the fact that that you want to become one is already, you're a step ahead. And really, it's, I think, focus on what you're good at in terms of like learning things, making things, breaking things, exploring, researching, slowly build up those skills. And when it comes to the time where you have to select a pathway of study, pick something you're very passionate about learning and passionate about studying. It doesn't necessarily have to be, maths or science or biology or chemistry or physics. It doesn't have to be the traditional subject. If you are really good at the finance side of things, or you want to learn more on like how money's been spent, or like how funding works, or even the environmental aspect of things, the art side of things, the humanities aspect, anything that you're really it gets you excited to kind of learn more, or get up from bed and you want to only do that, like invest in that, focus on that. And then once you've come to an age that you really know, I've done this is what I have, pick a country, pick a university, pick a a company that you have this goal and you have this dream to work in, and then slowly align your other professional skills towards it. And I think the good part about the industry is like it's so multidisciplinary that if you are in the humanities or the art side of things, or if you are in the technology side of things, if you want to become a doctor and you are in the niche of the sciences, or you want to become a lawyer even, there are space lawyers, there are space doctors, there are space business professionals, there are space artists. Like you can put space to the beginning of any job that's out there right now, and the job is there. Don't be like discouraged that it's not here in Australia. Maybe it's in the continent, maybe it's in the neighboring continent, but there is a job already out there for you. And so with that, I still have my dream and my goal to become an astronaut, and one day go to space. And I think how I'm working towards is that on the side, I am still working on the outreach side of things, of like collaborating with other universities and countries to make projects, make people like aware of the space industry and how we can send people to space or things to space. And on the side of course, like being healthy, being active, because a good part of space travel and going to space is you have to be fit, and you have to be fit emotionally, physically, socially, all the components in together. So I think working on it personally, but also having others work with you to it, because I think it's nice and good to go to space. But what if like I can take like more people with me, or I can make a lot of people ready to go to space with me? I think that is something that I've learned in the past few years, and that excites me even more than me just going to space. So I think even though traditionally only agencies or countries with space resources were able to send people to space, right now the human space flight sector is getting commercialized to a way that access to go to space is now being given to many other countries that don't have an agency, or countries that necessarily don't have the funding or the resources to send someone or something to space. And I think that's the cool part of it, because now that means like anybody from anywhere in the world can have the dream to become an astronaut, and it doesn't have to be limited to the countries that usually send people to space. So one day my opportunity will come, and I will take that day. But one day at a time, I am preparing for that special day.
Yeah, amazing. Hope to see you one day in that astronaut suit up at the space station or on the moon, or maybe even Mars. That'd be absolutely amazing. We have a question from Steve, who asks, what has been a really cool space event that you've been to in Australia? And from a student perspective, what groups do you recommend, like networking groups or social groups, space-related stuff?
I think the coolest event that is in Australia, I think I'm still yet to go, which I think hopefully will come in December, the Australian Space Forum. But I think I've been to quite a few that were organized by universities to bring industry and to bring students together to showcase the amount of opportunities we have, and to show how much we can collaborate amongst organizations. But Science Alive, that was held, I think, a couple of months ago here in Adelaide, had a very good space section. And I was amazed myself on the kids and the students that came by our stall and wanted to know more about space and how much they were willing to interact from such a small age. Kids in Space is also a good forum if you are in that age bracket. But I think right now there are a lot of organizations locally as also internationally that are good for space enthusiasts to be part of. I know the Space Advisory Space Generation Advisory Council is one of them that is very active right now. SEDS is a good one, and many others that do programs and outreach activities, maybe in cities, maybe in the districts, or maybe in country as a whole as well. And I think it's a matter of where do you go search for these things? I think websites are still a good place to go see. So just on the web, you can search these things. But also, if you're part of any social media networks, you can go search those things and be part of it, and make sure you follow their posts, you follow their events, and you interact with the accounts and make them know that you're interested and you want to be part of the group. I think that's the beauty of also social media, is that you are so the distance between you and what you want to do, or how much you want to be engaged within the space and industry, is so small, which is a good thing, that you can directly reach out to these companies or events or organizations and express your interests. And I am 99% sure that someone will respond to you and someone will guide you and tell you this is what you need to do.
I think just at the end there, you also touched on a really, really great point. That is, if you have a question, you can reach out to people in the space industry. Everybody, especially, Australia being such a young space player, I guess, a lot of people, were in that position, not that many years ago. And so they're always eager to help out with any questions you might have, put you on the right pathway. Even if they themselves can't help you, chances are, they'll know somebody who can. And to put that in perspective, I have a friend who, ended up getting an internship after having a coffee with somebody at a space company. So, I guess it's really, really important to just, to know that the worst someone can say is no, right? And just take that opportunity because you never know where it'll take you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We have a question from Jimmy, which I think you kind of touched on with your career pathway, but as someone who isn't really into science, how would they get into the space industry?
I think many ways. There are many ways to get into the space industry, and having a science background helps you because at the end, space has a lot of the technological, the science side of things, but having the capacity to understand, I think, is the main thing. So even if you're not a science person, but you still can comprehend, still can understand, still can have a conversation around that subject with someone, like very like high level or like very from a basic level, that's enough. Translating the technology, being able to understand and to tell it back, I think that skill is a little bit more relevant than having actually a technical or a science background, is my experience. And when you say you're not non-science, what does it mean? Jot that down. Maybe it's like being a lawyer, maybe it's like accounts, maybe it's humanities as arts, I said, maybe it's communications, maybe it's journalism, maybe it's everything but science. That's okay, because that is still a department of space, and you have career opportunities. For example, if you are someone that likes numbers, that likes money, that likes the finances, the accounting, we have to have those people in space companies. We have to have someone that makes sense of the data that we have to see if how much is this going to be, how much will people buy this service or this product, who are going to invest in us, or which company, which agency, which venture capitalist firm should we target to. So all of these things don't come from a science background. They come from skills and from capability that you kind of study and develop for yourselves, of like data research and knowing who to talk, how to talk, what to talk, what to write, how to write it. Like a lot of the things that you don't really realize come into play when it comes to very, very critical things in the space industry. And 3 out of 5 times, they're not science related at all. So, nothing to be demotivated about if you're not a science person. It doesn't make you any less qualified than a science person to enter the space industry.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really great point. Just to acknowledge that space jobs are not just an engineer or an astronaut. There are so many different space jobs. If it was just engineers, the industry wouldn't work, right? And so there are so many different professions, you yourself included, that are absolutely critical into how companies run and how the industry just works. Now, unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining and listening to our space guest. And thank you so much to Kavindi for taking the time to share their story with us. And yeah, it's been fantastic. So if you would like to learn more about, space in Australia or how to become a space expert, please come visit the Australian Space Discovery Centre, which is in Adelaide in Lot 14, which is also where Inovor is. It's a really cool, technology precinct that we've got here in Adelaide. So I definitely invite you to check that out if you are interested. But yeah, unfortunately, that's all we have time for. So thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your days.